field to hive to table, this award-winning company has always strived to teach people how rewarding beekeeping can really be. It hopes that one day there will be a beehive in every single backyard in Texas.
We always like to see where people are from. Is anyone from here in Round Rock? Okay. Anyone from further away? This ranch has 4 different separate springs on it. And those springs provide water even in the deepest parts of the drought for the bees, and of course a lot of blooming plants and all of that. So honeybees have traditionally done extremely well here. Now go 10 miles to the west, east, north, or south, and you may or may not get the same sort of situation, but here it's very, very reliable, which is why there's been a honey business of one kind or another in this town, where we used to have our hives at the end of this road on the old Bones Ranch. And that area is now covered completely by an Amazon warehouse. But prior to that, we had a lot of our hives right there and our teaching apiary. So we're going to turn off the lights, show you a little video that takes you down there. That was only 3 years ago. And so instead of putting on the bee suits and going out there, we're actually going to take you there by video, and then we'll resume.
I love working with bees because they're very predictable. There's also an element of danger at the same time. If you treat them well, they're going to make honey. If you mistreat them even the slightest little bit, they're going to let you know about it right away. The consequences are real and painful sometimes. I like that type of relationship where it all comes down to the level of personal responsibility that an individual has and how well they can take care of their environment. For producing different types of honey. And so that's why honey from here, it has more flavor, it's more complex, and from a nutrient standpoint, it's richer as well.
You got sheets of wax coating either side, and beekeepers will have to remove this honeycomb. So this is like them putting a lid on a jar, and all of these little honeycomb cells are their jars.
We look for the harvests that will blend well with each other. We know just based on our experience how much of each one should be added. And what that does is it creates a flavor profile that is our signature. And we've learned over the years how to adjust that signature to what people really, really like. That's the one key difference of a lot of other beekeepers, is that they never figure out how to balance flavors. They either will take the route of we're going to add something to it or we're going to take something away. And we don't do either one. What we do is we just add honey from our hives in different proportions.
Here on her abdomen, she's got this super long abdomen. I'll bring out my frame here. So they're right here, here, and here. It's like the pores in your skin. So she's constantly releasing this pheromone. And these bees, they're rubbing their antennas. It kind of looks like they're bowing down, but they're rubbing their antennas along the sides of her body. These are all worker bees that follow the queen around. The queen can't do anything for herself. So basically, they're cleaning her up, they're licking her, they're spreading her pheromones throughout the hive. We'll talk a little bit about the queen later, but that's what they're doing. After she does that, she's going to do other indoor activities. She might build wax. They have these, like, they almost look like scales on her abdomens, and they're wax glands, just like your ears, just like your earwax. They produce wax here, they take it in their legs and they kind of feed it up to their mandible where they chew it to add water, and that's how they build those like hexagonal cells. They do that.
So basically it's pretty cool, and it's very, very stylized. So basically what happens is the bees start off in the morning, they're sitting at the entrance of the hive, usually like a little area like this. They're all lined up and they're waiting for the sun to reach the horizon. As soon as it does, they're out flying. And the first thing they're doing is taking orientation flights. That's where they use the bathroom. They get a sense for temperature and all that other stuff, wind speed, humidity. And they're using see that picture up there? That's a very, very, very close-up picture of an antenna. And they look like hairs on there. Those aren't hairs, those are nerve endings. So you can see how sensitive the bee is. Imagine if you had those kind of nerve endings on the outside of your body. We've got them under our skin. They have them on the outside of the body. And so, plus also the bee's body is an exoskeleton, and it's like a little pressure chamber. So it's very sensitive to changes in barometric pressure. They take all of that data in, and then they come back into the hive, and they basically share it with all their sisters, and they try and get an idea as to what is going on outside for the safety of the whole hive, but also to determine where they're all going to go forage. And so basically, the way that they're going to determine where the hive goes to forage for that particular day is by a dance-off. The bees are going to come back, and they're all going to, or not all, but a few of them are going to waggle their tails. And one will waggle his tail for arguing for let's go over here, another one will waggle his tail for, or I keep saying his, it's not his, her tail, to say to go over here, and a third one back over here, that sort of thing. The thing is that bees will waggle their tail independently of what their sisters are doing, and they'll do this, it's almost like a shiver motion, and that corresponds to the general perceived quality of nectar at the food source that they're arguing for. So like it's one of those things where on a scale of 1 to 10, a 3 is always pretty much a 3, a 7 is always a 7, and a 10 is always a 10. So they can all come back and they all shake. They're not going to change their dance to try and be better than another bee. They're just going to try and accurately represent what they found based on their perceived quality of the food source. And then the other bees are going to look at them and determine, oh yeah, this one's dancing the best. That means one, that it has a lot of nectar in it, but two, it has to be bright colors to draw them in and to say, hey, this is the average. Why do you think I've never met anyone who wasn't an entomologist who could figure out why it's important that the bee's wings are stiff? Any guesses?
Helicopters. Yeah,
for loft? Well, I mean, that could be it. But really what it is that whenever a bee lands on a flower, it needs to shock the flower. Oh. And that's to release the surface tension of the nectar and of the pollen, so that they can more quickly suck up the nectar and dust themselves over with the pollen. So the stiffness of the wings, you're going to get you're going to collect more electromagnetic charge if you have stiff wings, especially if they're cellophane-like wings, which is what a bee has, as opposed to big, flexible, flappy wings. So there's that. But then the other thing is that whenever a bee's wings operate, bees have two sets of wings, and they can detach. So a bee, if they want to go for speed, they put the two wings together, and they turn like this, and they fly like this. But they can detach the wings, one set here, one set here, and they can kind of change them to adjust to land kind of like a helicopter. But the other thing is that, very similar to a helicopter, if you've ever watched, if you could ever like maybe go on YouTube and watch a helicopter land, it looks, unless you know what you're looking for, it looks like it's just kind of gracefully coming down. But actually what a helicopter is doing is it's coming down until it gets a few feet above, and then it just drops. And sometimes it only drops like 6 inches. But it does drop because what happens is that there's a loss of air pressure between the landing pad and the underside of the helicopter blades. It's the same thing on a bee's wings. A bee will lose eventually air pressure between its wings and the surface of the flower, and it'll just drop. But that drop is part of the mechanical loosening of the nectar and the pollen as well. That makes the cross-pollination of flowers possible. To pre-honey. Now, what is the difference between honey and pre-honey? It's the water content. Pre-honey does not have low levels let me say it another way. Pre-honey has very high levels of water. It has 92% water. Honey has only 18% water. So whenever they're bringing the honey back, the pre-honey back to the hive, it's very, very liquidy and it's very heavy. So the way that they get rid of that is that they regurgitate the nectar or the pre-honey into the mouth of a nurse bee, passes it on to the bees, and then whatever's left they put up in storage in the top of the hive. And then they stand over it with their wings. Once again, the rigid wings, it creates more loft and more wind. They basically fan the honey until it dehydrates down to 18%. And when it gets at 18%, that's when the honey is preserved. That's when it will not spoil anymore. And they put a wax cap over it and seal it. And that's why in some of these pictures, you see this white stuff here. Those are wax caps. That's how we as beekeepers, that's how we know that the honey is ready to harvest. If it has a cap on it, that means that it's perfect. And perfect is a reference, that's a technical term. It means that it's no longer going to be able to spoil. So, and it also is clean because the wax keeps it clean. So. Yeah, the other thing is that eating honey in general reduces swelling in the body, so especially among women. And so what we've seen over and over again is that people that use honey regularly have a significant drop in average blood pressure. So I know just because I measure blood
That's great
pressure.
to know the effects. Everyone worries about sugar so much. But I'm always baking with your honey and serving it up to everybody.
Yeah, and if you just use regular, like cane sugar, you'll get the opposite effect. You'll get higher blood pressure and more swelling. But with honey, it goes in that more carbohydrates. But the protein comes from plant pollen. So that's why you hear stories of people surviving in the desert eating bugs and honey, or eating plants and honey, because there is protein in honey. A lot of people don't know that. So this is a really good honey. It's made with 15 different peppers. And it's not designed to be blow your socks off hot. It's designed to be more flavorful than hot.